Live, all the way live. Back out at the soccer fields again today. See who all jumps on. It's a little after 5 o'clock, a little after 1700. See who joins the chat this afternoon, because we need to discuss this stuff. 7mm rim mag. That's really the topic of conversation on the live stream this evening. Oh, boy. Wolf. Need another cup of coffee. Oh, you have one in front of you. What's going on, Chris? So we need to discuss focus. 7mm rim mag. And as you can see, that is a, yep, what's going on, Jeff? Soccer again, you better believe it. So it's a piece of brass that was not decapped or deprimed, despite what it looks like. That is a piece of brass that had a blown primer. And that's what I want to discuss, because 7mm rim mag load data from Federal, need to go over that, because it's just not, I don't know, I had some issues with it. So the problem that I had is I used this data as a point of reference. Okay, I have Vitavori N560, right, as the powder, and that's what I want to go with on this 7 rim mag project. Well, I know Federal brass is not great, but I wanted to go with that brass, specifically the primed brass, because I got it from American Reloading, right? So I wanted to use the Federal brass because I was running Federal load data, which they use obviously Federal brass, Federal primers, and in the Federal prime brass that I got, that's what it's got in it, Federal primers. So I wanted to run that. Now, this is using the 155 grain Federal terminal ascent, which I have that bullet, but I'm not using that bullet, okay? I'm using the 160 grain Barnes TSX, okay? Which, they're fairly comparable bullets, all right, in overall length and weight. So I start off.
I need a hair tie.
Okay. I don't have one, obviously. Probably don't have one in here. Nope. See if somebody else has one.
What am I gonna do?
Problem solving. Something that the world needs more of, especially the youth today. Go solve problems. So I'm running N560, and I'm running the Barnes 160 grain TSX, and I start at the minimum charge. Start at the minimum charge, which is 64.5 grains, according to, again, federal load data, right? This is with the 155 grain federal terminal ascent. 64.5 grains of N560. That got them a little over 2,700 feet per second. I fired 64.5 grains. Check it out. Fired 64.5 grains and the Barnes 160. And this, so 5 grains heavier bullet. Fired it and blew the primer, and my velocity was 3115. So about 400 feet a second faster than the federal load data. Now, of course, they're using their 155 grain. I was shooting a 160. It's fairly close in overall length, actually, on the bullet. So yeah, something's going on with the data. I'm not exactly sure what. They go all the way up to 71.5 grains as a max charge. I don't see how that's even possible. I was at 64.5 and blew a primer, and I hit 3115. So, you know, I don't know. Need to go back and do a little more testing there. I don't have hair ties. That's what I said. That's what I said. .22 mag underrated. Well, depends on what you're using it for, I guess. Right? I mean, I don't think it's underrated or overrated. I reckon. I mean, it's just 22 mag. Let's see. Chris. Vidavory data shows 56.6 to start with the 160 Nautilus, or not Nautilus, Naturalis, or however you pronounce that. Yeah, so about that, after I made that obvious catastrophic mistake, because that was where I started. I started at 64.5. What's going on 18 wheels? I started at 64.5, which was the min charge, right, that they had listed here for the terminal ascent. And I was going up, right, just to find pressure and check velocity and pressure and all that fun stuff. And as soon as I shot the first one and I blew the primer, obviously I was like, you know what? Time to go back to the drawing board. So that's what I did, and I backed it way down. And went back down to, I can't remember where it was, maybe 54 grains, possibly. Something like that. I backed it way down, right, from where I was, and started there, and things were more reasonable as in terms of pressure and velocity, expected velocity, and all of that. So I ended up going up to, I think I went up to 60.5, and I think I finished somewhere just north of 2,900 feet per second. So, which I think is going to be a pretty good landing spot for that 160 grain Barnes. Now, what I did find interesting was, so this is a project for somebody else, right? This is a project for my buddy. And I was like, if you don't mind send me whatever factory ammunition you use as well, right? If you've got some of that left over, send some of that with the gun, and then that way I can kind of establish a baseline of, hey, this is how it performed with what he's used to shooting in the gun. And it happened to be the 155 grain Federal Terminal Ascent factory ammunition. That's what he uses. He gave me nine rounds, went and shot those 9 rounds, and the average velocity, it came out right at like 3110. So that stuff is moving on, and I'm not sure what powder they're using to get those insane velocity results. I'm thinking maybe it's probably Reloader 26 or 25. It's got to be something along those lines. I mean, I was getting faster velocity than what they even have published on their load data. So yeah. So that stuff's cooking. That factory ammo is definitely cooking. But yeah, had to back my charges down a little bit. So we're back in the safe zone, but that was not fun, right? When you blow a primer, when you shoot it and deprime it all at the same time, that's never fun. But we're now on track. That's been a while, actually, since I did that. I just hadn't made a video about it yet. But blew the primer. We're back in business now, though. We're in the safe operating zone. I just find this load data very interesting on that terminal ascent, right? Who is it, Chris? I think, Chris, you were saying the max is 62.2 with that 160 Lapua bullet. It's crazy to think that the 155, so it's only a 5 grain difference in bullet weight, and 5 grain difference in bullet weight, and I know the bullet length is probably very similar between that 160 Barnes and the 155 terminal ascent. But again, they go up to 71.5 grains as a max charge. I don't see how that's possible. I don't know. Maybe they know something I don't, but yeah, Jeff, thanks for strong guns. No kidding. When I fired that round, I mean that had a decent amount of recoil to it as well when I shot that round. And then I looked over on the chronograph, and it said 3115, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, I was like, holy smokes. Now I go to unload the brass and take a look. Sure enough, primer was nowhere to be found. So compressed at 71. Yeah, I mean it shows as a compressed charge, 71.5 grains compressed, but I don't see how they get that much in the case safely. I have no idea. Like this is blowing my mind. Now I do have these bullets. I do have the Federal Terminal Ascent bullets, the 155s. So I can go and test this if I wanted to. It's just, I don't know. I just don't see how they're getting to that level of powder. Burn rate may be different from what it's supposed to be. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that Now I know I was seated 30 thousandths shorter than what they call out for this Federal Terminal Ascent. If you go and look at the Barnes data, I can't remember offhand exactly what it is, maybe like 3.21 or something like that. I was at 3.24. The Federal, for this Terminal Ascent, they've got it at 3.27. So I'm 30 thousandths shorter is what I loaded to. So obviously that's going to play into it as well, but I can't imagine 30 thou making that big of a difference on your burn rate profile to be blowing primers at that powder charge. But I don't know. Like I said, we're back in the good. I think I'm going to try to stick around maybe 2,900, something like that, on the velocity. If I can find a good load that shoots around that 2,900 feet per second, I think we'll be good. Chris, there's no way. That's what I'm saying. There's no way. In my mind, I don't see how this is even possible. I have no clue. I don't know how it's possible to go that high of a charge weight. I mean, the bullet profile is not that different between the two. So, I don't know. But we learned a valuable lesson. You know, don't go, first, don't go chasing waterfalls, but also be careful what you use as reference data when you're working up loads. So, it can be dangerous, which is exactly what happened. AAC ammo, oh, that's the stuff Palmetto State produces. I don't know, don't shoot it. I've heard a lot of good stuff about it though. Oh yeah, distance to the lands. No, I'm still jumping. I'll have to go back and double check, but I'm jumping. It's like anywhere from 80 to 90 thousandths, I think. I've already checked that with that overall length. Yeah, I'm not anywhere close. It's not a situation where, you know, I was close to the lands and all of a sudden, you know, maybe had some weird pressure spike or anything like that. It wasn't anything along those lines. You put 70 grains in a 375. Yeah, I don't know. That seemed like a whole lot. Well, especially after I shot that one round and blew a primer. I went back and double checked myself, and then, you know, I pulled. So that was the thing too, because I had them lined up. I had loaded 10 to check velocity and pressure, and I started at 64.5. So after the primer blew and I saw the velocity, I was like, man, did I get my loading block somehow out of whack or turned around to where maybe I shot the 10th charge first, which would have been my max charge. That kind of went through my mind too. So I took all 9 of the remaining loaded rounds, took them back to the house, pulled all the bullets, and weighed each powder charge individually. And no, I did not. I grabbed the 64.5 grains. So I grabbed the lowest charge and shot it, and I got 31.15 on the velocity. It was just nuts. Absolutely crazy. So, I don't know. I feel like there's something a little off about that particular data set, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm just gonna keep running with it. I actually started looking at 270 Win short mag rifles last night after the live stream, after I got back home. I need to reach out to Derek. I need to send him a text and get a primer go, no-go gauge. Yeah, and that's the thing with this Federal brass, which I'd always heard, like Federal brass has maybe less case capacity than some other brands, and so at least in videos that I've seen, other people post and do capacity analysis on brass, Federal tends to be on the lower side of the case capacity, so you have to be careful about if you find a pretty good load in something else in another brand of brass, then you switch over to Federal, you can run into pressure issues because, you know, it doesn't have as much capacity, and then you're just putting the same amount of powder in. That could be a problem. But that's exactly why I wanted to use Federal load data. I was like, I'm using Federal prime brass. Let me just go to the source and say, hey guys, you know, can you send me load data for your terminal ascent bullet? And I figured that would be a good comparable source to load with the Barnes, because Barnes has good data, they just don't have Vitivori N560 listed. So, and you go and look at the Vitivori data, they don't have the Barnes 160 listed. So I was just trying to make do with what I could find. So yeah, that definitely bit me on that one. But I've got some 3-shot groups loaded up now. I did go back again, drop my charge way down, and started at a reasonable range in terms of pressure and velocity. And I think I found maybe a window that I want to explore velocity wise, anywhere from like 28.25 up to 29.25, I think is what I ended at, something around that range. So went back, loaded up. I think I loaded up 4 3-shot groups. So I gotta have time to go to the range and check those. So that's on the list. That's what I'll be attempting to get done next time I'm at the range, is get those 12 round shot, see how they do, and go from there. .270 Wisdom, I know where a Savage model 11 is, less than 1 box of shells fired. Nice. Yeah, I think I'm gonna hit up because Derek had mentioned he's got I think he said he's got a Tika T3X. I can't remember if he said it was stainless or black or blued, excuse me. I can't remember which one. I thought he said stainless, but I could be wrong. So I'm gonna hit him up, see what he's got, and then once I do that and Meredith Rifles gets back online, then I will, my plan is to take my Tika over there, take my barrel, my KP barrel, take it over there and be like, all right, here you go. Make it a 280 Ackley. But I really like 270 Winchester, but I am a fan of the Wisdom line of cartridges, so that 270 Wisdom, that looks like a pretty solid deer getting machine right there. Speaking of deer, man, deer season is rolling in really, I mean, it's practically August. It's insane. I think we've got dates identified on when we're going to Kentucky, so that's kind of a big deal. I actually need to go get my license. I got to get that purchased. So yeah, a lot of stuff to look forward to this coming season. We'll see how Kentucky works out this year. This will be our second. This will be our second season to go up there, hunt. Hopefully, we're really hopeful that somebody will get something on the ground this season. Kind of put a lot of time and effort into finding, you know, what appear to be pretty good spots. The first year, so last year when we went and scouted, we put out trail cams, got a lot of good lot of good info on bucks that are in the area, so hoping we can go seal the deal. What's your opinion? Oh, the snared life is in the house. That's my #1 YouTube channel recommendation for a channel to go subscribe to and watch. The snared life. What's your opinion of 25-06 for deer rifle? He knows my opinion on the 25-06. He knows it already, but I'll give my opinion on it. So I finished up a project for a buddy of mine. His daughter has a 25-06. It's a Ruger M77 Hawkeye, and that is a really, really great cartridge for whitetail deer or mule deer, anything along those lines. You probably go kill elk with it. You put the right bullet in there, put the bullet in the right place, and you're killing elk probably, if I had to guess. But just another great offspring of the 30-06. Jeff, I tried to trade my nephew for the 270 Wisdom to build a 6mm PRC. Nice. Funes. Hello from the reloading room, bit late. Oh, you're right on time. Anytime you join, you're right on time. Right. Unless you join at the very tail end of the stream like a couple of folks did last night, and they pop on, they say hey, and then I'm like, all right, well, time to call it a day. But the stream last night, I mean, good night, the thing was like an hour and a half long. Don't know how long we're gonna stream this evening. Over an hour probably, if I had to guess. But yeah, 25-06, I'm a fan of it. It's a really good cartridge. Now, the Ruger M77 that I was referencing, the M77 Hawkeye, I think it would have been a more pleasant reloading project experience had it not. I think there was just some inherent accuracy issues with that particular rifle. So, you know, a different platform, a different bolt action rifle, you know, maybe it would have been a little bit better of an experience. I did have to do a lot of work on finding a halfway decent combination that shot well in that gun. That one was pretty finicky. That was one of the more finicky rifles that I've tried to load for. That one was a little bit of a pain. So, but got there in the end. Ended up going with the, I believe it was the 90 grain GMX. Maybe. I'm trying to remember now. It might have been the 90 grain GMX, I think is what I ended up settling on. And it shot well. I can't remember the powder and all that. I can't remember that combination off the top of my head. But it's definitely a great cartridge for whitetail. And it's one of those where, you know, me and my brother, we'd talked about it in the past, kind of like, hey, it's definitely something I'd like to own at some point in time. But it's very similar to like the 270 Winchester, right? I've got one now, and I don't mind getting rid of it, you know, not getting rid of it, but I don't mind converting it into a 280 Ackley, because I would like to own a 270 Winchester, like a Model 70 with a nice wood stock. I feel the same way about the 25-06. That seems like a pretty classic type of cartridge that I would want to have in a classic, put that in air quotes, hunting rifle, right? More of a traditional style hunting rifle. So something with a wood stock, like a Model 70 or a classic Remington, something along those lines. Yeah, I've got so much stuff I got to get caught up on reloading wise. I've got a ton of brass that has been deprimed and waiting to be cleaned. Just haven't done it yet. I got to get that Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler fired up and running, which I'm a big fan of, by the way. I don't know what y'all's preferred method of tumbling is, dry tumbling or wet tumbling, but I've never done the dry tumble, so I can't really speak to that. But the wet tumbling, man, it just seems so easy. Now, I have tried the ultrasonic cleaner. I've done that before as well. That worked pretty good. But the wet tumble with stainless steel pins, that seems to be pretty solid option. Between the 270 Wisdom, let's see, the stuff that's kind of been dry media works well, especially with corn cob. Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit. That seems to be the standard, kind of like the standard dry tumble go-to, is just use some corn cob media and you're good to go. Along with the 270 Wisdom, that cartridge, another one that I've been eyeballing and checking out quite a bit, 6.5 Grendel. It's one I've owned before in the past. Huge fan of 6.5 Grendel. So now looking at getting another one of those. Something like a Howa, the Howa Carbon Stalker. I know they came out with their ultralight or their super light, whatever they're calling it, which is awesome. But the problem is they don't offer that in 6.5 Grendel. Their new super light that they came out with, where the gun is, you know, from the factory, it's like under, what is it, like 4.5 pounds or whatever it is, just some crazy number. They don't offer that in they don't offer that in 6.5 Grendel, which is sad. Now they do offer it in 6.5 Creedmoor, which is great, and I'm a huge fan of that cartridge, but I've already got a 6.5. Oh, you sold a Browning A-Bolt 25-06 to get your first reloading kit. Wish you still had it. Yeah, those Brownings are really nice. I've handled a couple of them throughout my my reloading career, whatever you want to call that. My time reloading, I've worked on a couple of Browning projects, and they always seem to be really nice rifles. I have no complaints. For some reason, they're never really at the top of my list of like stuff that I think about purchasing whenever I'm looking at buying a rifle. Not exactly sure why, because they're pretty solid. Like I said, no complaints. It's just, it's one of those where they never float to the top of my brain when I'm coming up with a list of potential rifles, rifle brands and models to buy. They definitely make a good gun though. Now the Winchester XPR, that's another one that I've owned a couple of, and I'm a pretty big fan of that. So I wouldn't mind getting another Winchester XPR. I think I had one of those in 350 Legend. That shot really well. I thought I had another one at one time. Just can't remember what it was. But yep, gotta get a lot of stuff dialed in for hunting season. I feel like I'm running behind. I've got a muzzle loader that I haven't even attempted to do anything with. Really need to get that thing sighted in and squared away. All right, so you have a unique method like Cortina. You don't tumble your brass at all. You prefer to get graphite buildup in the necks. so I don't have to add inconsistency from lubricating the inside of the case neck. I used to not clean my brass at all. Like, you can go back on my channel and you can watch. I never cleaned brass. Me cleaning brass has been a very recent addition into my reloading process. So I'm going to take credit for it and say that I taught Eric Cortina that. He did it after I did, so that must mean that he learned from me, right? That's the way I'm going to look at it. So I taught a world-class shooter that, hey, you don't have to clean your brass. I'm just kidding. Marlin XL7 would be a great sleeper. I've seen a couple of those floating around from time to time on some of the, like, the used gun websites and stuff. I've seen a couple of XL7s. You lube the outside only in size with no expander in the die. The mandrel, then mandrel expand separately. Then it hits ultrasonic before priming and loading, so there is again equal lube on everything in the lot for consistent neck tension. Sorry for, oh no, hey, you keep the long post coming. That doesn't bother me at all. It takes me a second to read them because I read slow, but that's all right. Yeah, so on my 6.5, I do something somewhat similar. I have the Hornady, just the standard full-length sizing die that I have removed the decapping pin and expander, basically the expander assembly. I've removed it from the die, so I pretty much use it as a body die. And then I have the L.E. Wilson mandrel that I use to size the mouth of the case. And I do that, which that's not technically what those are supposed to be used for, right? According to L.E. Wilson, you go and look at their expanding mandrel little die set that they sell. That's really for brand new brass to just uniform the case mouths. But in my experience, in a 6.5 at least, in my 6.5 Creedmoor, it provides adequate neck tension, and it does a great job at doing that, and the performance has been really good. I haven't had any issues doing that. Now, 308 on the other hand, I've tried using their 30 cal expander. This is just their standard expander that comes in the kit. I've tried using it like in 30 TC and stuff, trying to do a very similar approach to the brass prep, and the neck tension on that brass it's not enough. It's very, very light neck tension, so it's kind of interesting. Chris said Richard Lee book said clean or dirty, it won't matter. Might seem strange, but I've got ES of 4s and 5s across multiple chamberings with this, so I don't change. Yeah, don't change it. Let's see. Jeff, I never hunted with the 25-06. Tried to trade my daughter for her 6mm rim. Oh, a 788. Nice. For the 25-06, but that's what got me into reloading. Foodness on that. I was talking with Alex from AMP, and we found that the Hornady was really overworking the brass. The Forster dies made a huge difference. Nice. Yeah, Forster makes some good stuff. I've never used their full-length sizing die. I know the Snared Life does. He just posted a video about that the other day, comparing it to a Lee precision die. So that video's up. You guys go check that out if you're interested. He was loading 6.5 Grendel, and he was using the Forster and the Lee die to do some sizing work. So kind of doing a comparison. It will pay for itself in brass life alone. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, that's my Hornady die. I have it set in a way where there's really not much being done to the shoulder of the brass, and I bought Lapua brass a long time ago, and it has, I have no idea how many firings it has on it at this point. It's a bunch. There are a lot of firings on that Lapua brass. Now I did buy a second batch. Now, not too long ago, that I've got one firing on it right now. Concentricity will be a bonus too, or will be a bonus. Yep. Yeah, concentricity is one of those things that I kind of went down that rabbit hole way back when, kind of a long time ago, and it was one of those metrics that I kind of focused on for a little while. Bought a concentricity gauge, checked all my rounds, realized that, hey, I'm making pretty good ammunition, so I'm tired of checking this. Well, and then I reached a point where I was having issues with repeatability on loads that I hadn't really had issues with before. And I went to recheck concentricity, and man, it was all over the place. All over the place. Come to find out, the issues were coming from the press that I was using. It was a Lee press, and it had started to get really wonky on the operation, and it was creating a lot of issues. So it was good to at least be aware of the concentricity, have the ability to measure it. Don't obsess over it, but at least have the ability to measure it. Was very beneficial, and it helped me out in that situation. So it's not something I really focus on now. I still have the gauge. I can check if I want to, but there are other variables that I think contribute much greater to the group on target for me, right? I'm shooting at 100 yards, so I think there are other things that I need to, other basics, right? Kind of blocking and tackling stuff. You get that down pat, good to go. 18 Wheels American Reloading just sent out an email with a bunch of powder now. Alliant, what was that, 4,000 MR, Big Game, couple others too. Oh, okay. Nice. Funas, measure your neck diameter, pre-expansion and post. You may see way too much there. Concentricity seemed to matter much more with solids than leg core. That's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously concentricity matters. To what degree does it matter? Has anyone actually proven that, right? I don't think so. I don't think there's tests that show definitively that, hey, the concentricity was the reason why you saw XYZ result, and it's repeatable. So therefore we know that once you get over a certain level of out of roundness, if you want to call it that this is where you're going to start to see stuff. This is where you're going to start to see performance degradation, right? I don't think, not to my knowledge, I don't think anyone has shown that level of detail. Like, hey, once you measure, 5 thousandths of run out, right? Once you get over 4, that's where you start to see an issue. I don't think anyone's broken it down to that level yet. Not sure anyone would want to try to, but leg core have a bit more give. The solid hits at an angle, has less give, and it doesn't help. Yeah, I mean that what you're saying definitely makes sense if you just take a step back and think about it. That material, yeah, it probably doesn't give as much. What's going on, Derek? Video yesterday showed the chamber throat of Mossberg rifle and how out of round it was, cut very asymmetrically, which would account for the very poor accuracy. Yeah, so So I guess maybe that's an even better point. So which one, you know, I think we would all agree that probably matters more than the concentricity of the ammunition, right? Obviously, the concentricity of the chamber, how everything. So my phone overheated, so I'm gonna have to call it quits on this one. Super short live stream, only made it 45 minutes, but my phone, it's in emergency mode, it overheated. So we'll catch you guys next time. I gotta run, try to let this thing cool off.